She came over and she dropped these keys in my hand and she said, I rented you an art studio.
On this episode of Shout Out, the award-winning fine artist whose paintings have been featured in multiple galleries and publications including Vogue, GQ, and House of Cocoa, Lauren Forcella.
I felt it as a child. I spent a lot of time by myself in the woods as a kid and had my magic places that I found. And I would do some little thing to make it like a home. And I had lots of those in different places. From the first stuff I did with my paintbrush, I knew that was what I was supposed to be doing. It was that profound. It was like everything conspired to get me to see and understand this talent that I didn't know about. I knew my life was going to change. And I'll spend, a week, I'll spend 9 days, I'll sometimes spend 2 weeks on one. I think one of my skills is recognizing when it's masterful. And I know right away. And when it's not masterful, I don't stop.
So I came across your work on Instagram, and all my friends who know me, they know that I love sunsets, sunrises, nature, and I was just drawn to your work. It's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
But I know nothing about you. And I purposely, as soon as I saw your work, I'm like, I want her on the show. I've got to interview her. And I purposely kind of kept myself in the dark. So one thing I really like doing in this show is just starting kind of into your story. Where did this love for painting begin?
Okay. I like that. So that's the question. Where did the love for painting begin?
Yeah.
It's an interesting question because I didn't know that I had a talent for painting for quite some time. I mean, all through childhood, I never picked up a brush. All through high school, I was totally college bound, science all the way. Math was my favorite subject. And I never took an art class in high school. Then I'm a geology major in college because I am so into nature. I'm really into Earth, Gaia. I got introduced to the Gaia hypothesis when I was 14, and I was just stunned. And I knew I would work for the Earth. And I can remember the moment when it just kind of descended on me, and this feeling and knowingness. And so it was a mission. And then I went to college in geology major. And then I was a hydrogeologist because that's the only field of geology that isn't exploitive. And it's all minerals and gas and, so I was in hydro anyway, all this time, I have no idea I have any talent at all in art.
Okay, so when did that happen? When did that shift? What was the event that occurred?
Okay, there really was an actual event too. So I go on and I am a hydrogeologist. I get really fried out because it's really political, and I'm thinking I'm just going to save the planet, and I'm idealist and I'm smart and I'm publishing. I've 4 times published by the time I'm 27, and everything's political. They literally hide reports. It's so bad. And this is, just a while ago. And I got really frustrated with it, but I left the field over this. And I'm like, well, I'm not able to do what I wanted to do in this way. So I thought I would be a writer. And that was my other love. Well, my love was writing, really. I didn't know I had any art talent, but I loved to write. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to be a writer. And I retooled in writing, and I was a writer. I wrote, a deadline for a bunch of years. And in the middle of my writing, and I'm also in a little writing group where we meet once a week and write creatively and write spontaneously and read to each other. Oh, biggest thrill. Oh, I love this day of the week. And the facilitator of that kept bugging me to go to this thing at this woman's art studio, kind of a process group where we all had a meditation and we all went and created something and then shared. And it's all about creative process. And I'm like, I don't have time for that. Why? And I'm no interest. This is what you start wondering about all this stuff, because she would not let up on it. Bugged me and bugged me and bugged me and bugged me. And finally, she said, you could paint the images for this book I had just written. And I thought, maybe I could. Like it was a book about the cosmos, Earth and sun and moon. I could do a little first grader moon. And I was like, oh, okay, all right, you're right. And I went there, and from the first day in there, the first stuff I did with my paintbrush, which you could do anything in there. I was one of the few people that picked up a paintbrush. You could do collage and sculpture, and you do anything in there. I knew that was what I was supposed to be doing. It was that profound.
I love it.
It was like instantaneous. And I'm like, how do I know how to do this? It was like, I just knew what to do, and I knew how to do it. And it was the strangest feeling. And I went home and I I think I did one painting. The thing was 6 weeks. And so I had 6 weeks worth of paintings on paper, big pieces of paper from that. And I went home and would stare at them and I knew my life was going to change. But I didn't understand how it would change. How do you be an artist? How do you ever make a living as an artist? It was just not in my wheelhouse. And so then, of all the crazy things, right after this class, right in the middle of this class thing, this process group, my then husband gets a promotion, and we're moving across from California to New Hampshire. And we're moving in 6 weeks, like boom, and it's corporate, and they're going to move us, and they sell our house for us and everything.
Wow.
All the kids and the dogs, and we all like moved, and by plane, our stuff followed us in the moving vans, and our cars were shipped. And wow, it was such a crazy whirlwind. And we got there to New Hampshire, which is snowy, and we got there on February 1st. And our rental fell through that we had gotten for ourselves. So no one wanted to rent to us. We had 4 kids and 2 dogs and a cat, and we couldn't find a place to rent. And so all this stuff is in storage this whole time that we're moving. We're just operating out of 24 bags that we took on the plane. 6 months we were like that until we finally found the house we wanted to buy. And then, okay, now I have a friend. By now, 6 months later, you hope. So I have this good friend, and I'm like, will you come over when I open these crates? There was corporate move, so they crated the art, the framed original art, and they created it. I said, would you come over when I open these crates? Because I'm just scared it was just a dream or something. There's been such a whirlwind, moving 4 times and all these little rentals. I have no idea what happened back there in California, but it seemed profound.
Yeah.
I was scared. And so she came over, and we got the screwdriver out. We opened these crates. 2 days later, she came over and she dropped these keys in my hand. And she said, I rented you an art studio.
Talk about a sign. And she said, here are the keys. It's yours. It was like, I get goosebumps just talking about it. Yeah, it was like everything conspired to get me to see and understand that this talent that I didn't know about. People say, oh, I'm not talented. I'm like, you maybe have no idea. Yeah.
I had no idea. None.
Yeah, that is incredible. And I did do a little bit of research, and I kind of want to dive into, if we could, the connection maybe with your dad, because I read something about his love of nature, and obviously that was there. And I think it's probably just dormant, waiting, hearing this story and then hearing that. I'm like, oh, this was always there, like you guys really focus in on nature. So if you could just kind of expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I recently painted a tribute painting for him of a peach tree. He was really into tree. He was really into agriculture more than wild nature. He was into agriculture, but he was so into fruit and nut trees, and that was his major at UC Davis. After he retired, he planted 10,000 oaks from the acorns. He was so crazy about oak trees and acorns, and oh my gosh. So yeah, so somewhere in there, the Italians, they're more ag. From what I know of Italians, so they're more like they like agriculture. My father literally planted 10,000 oak trees in rows. In rows. He got oh my God, he got a lot of flack for that too, even though once they got bigger, you couldn't really tell. And but that's how he was, that's how he thought. He's an ag guy.
Yeah.
I'm more of a wild nature girl. I have always had a connection to wild nature, and I feel like it saved my life so many times to be able to. We always lived. I wasn't raised by my father, so I was raised by my mother, and with her, we always lived near wild land, and where literally right out my back door, and it just became my touchstone. So
do you paint outdoors, or do you take photos and bring them in?
I take reference photos. I swear you have to be 25-year-old male, a French male, to go out there with your plein air and your easel, and oh my God, the littlest wind, and it's off like a sail. I'm tall too. They're all like all those easels. I'm like hunched over. I tried. I'm like, forget it.
I know. I've thought the exact same. Like, it's so romantic, and I love being outdoors, and I love creating and painting as well. But I'm like, I have never done that, simply because I'm like, it just seems like so much extra work. Like, I like having my stuff set up so I can just jump in.
Yes, thank you. I know. And then when I go in nature, I like to just immerse there.
Yeah.
Trees have such loving energy.
Oh my God. Well, okay. So on this note, I have just a small story. My brothers and I, right around the time that my daughter was being born, we kind of just did like, we got to do something. You're going to be in the house, like locked down for, a long time. And we took a hike through Muir Woods, and it was transformative. I was a 6-mile hike, and we go through this beautiful forest. And by the time we got done, the quality of conversation we were having and just how we felt, I was like, I have got to do this more. I've got to make this a focus in my life. And that, you talk about it saving your life, and the intensity of that time of my life, had I not been able to go out into nature.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I don't know.
Right. I know. I felt it as a child. I spent a lot of time by myself in the woods as a kid, lots of time, and had my magic places that I found. You'd see a certain spot, and I just really knew it was really magic. And I would do some little thing to make it like a home. And I had lots of those in different places in the woods. And yeah, I'm a different person for having grown up with that.
So if I could dive into, like, your style is amazing, and it is your style. And I like looking through your entire portfolio. I'm like, what was it always like that? Like, you talked about this Genesis point of like, I just knew I could do it. Was it always like that way?
Well, my landscapes always were that way. And my very first ones 27 years ago were that way. And just, I used acrylics then because I didn't, it's just what was cheaper, and like, you didn't need any special equipment to work with.
Right.
Acrylics. So, but yeah, they were that way. There's really tons of paint, and just really put on, it's my style is a style. It is a real style. The French Impressionists, some of them used, and it's got a bunch of names. One is called direct painting, which kind of makes sense. And another one is called a premier coup, which means first coup. You just paint it. You don't paint it in a thin, first thin, and then you let that dry, and then a little, and then the painting slowly takes form. I just paint it and
just straight up.
I don't back over it. and if it's big, I can't do that the whole thing, because I paint big. And so, but I do, each section is all done at that time. It's called, that's why it's called first coup.
Wow.
And then I move on. I finish, okay, now I'm working here, and then pretty soon the whole thing's done. But it's not layered.
Oh my gosh. I
don't go back and rework it. And so I thought at the beginning that this was somehow wrong, that all I saw, and now and then you see somebody's things and they're all doing that layering stuff. And I don't know. I just like what I do. But now that I do it for my living, I've really dug in. Okay, what is this called?
Yeah.
To be signed. And yeah, it's a real style. It's difficult, is what I understand. That's why not too many people. That's why you don't see it very often. But it's definitely been out there. Van Gogh painted that way. He did not let things dry and rework. He painted it right then, and with a lot of paint, and each brushstroke he put the brushstroke on and it stayed there.
That's it.
Yeah. Or you can go over it, but if you go over it, he's doing it while it's still wet.
Right.
Where then it just maybe mixes. It's not like you never put a brushstroke over another brushstroke.
How long does each painting take?
Depends on the size of a little painting I can do in a sitting. Like little for me is like 10 by 12, which is kind of average for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
But my typical paintings are 30 by 40, 40 by 40. I like those big paintings, and I'll spend a week. I'll spend 9 days. I'll sometimes spend 2 weeks on one, depending on how complicated it is, or how sometimes you get in a little like battle, like wait a minute, we're supposed to go this way, and no, God, they have a life of their own, and you can think you know what you're doing, and they can throw you for a loop, and then you have to kind of sit back and go, well, all right, what is it that you need? What do you need? What?
Yeah.
And you have to get there together. And so sometimes I can think, wow, I'm almost done with this painting.
Start shifting on you.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's like, wow, that 4 days later, now we are done. I never abandon a painting. I have never abandoned a painting.
Wow.
I stay with each painting until we're both satisfied, meaning the painting and I are both happy.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I don't, I've actually, I suppose there could be a time when I would, and the one time I did, but then I came back to it, but I was in a bad mental state. I realized I couldn't figure out what this painted needing for the life of me. And I finally just said, well, I guess I have my first reject. And I scraped off, because the way I paint so thick, I can't repaint it.
Right.
And there's no fixing it. So the part I was unhappy with, which was like the entire top half, I scraped it off, and I thought, don't throw it away, scrape it off, put it away. Who knows? And a year later, my daughter saw it, and she's like, oh, my favorite painting ever. Why didn't you finish this? And I looked at it with her, and I'm like, it's really great, isn't it? I knew exactly what to do with it, and I finished it.
That's awesome.
But that's the only one. Otherwise, I just stay on them right then while they're wet. Yeah, it really is a relationship for me, and I look at it that way. And it's like, I'm not giving up on this relationship.
I love that thought. I
Ah,
like actually having that connection with the piece on that level. I don't think I've ever brought it to that level, but that gives me insight and inspiration to take into my work.
mm, mm.
What kind of tips and advice would you give to somebody that is just starting to feel that inkling like you had at the very beginning, knowing what you know now? What would you tell them?
That's a great question. I think I would say paint with abandon. Pretend like you have all the money in the world and the paints are mean nothing. The cost of the paint means nothing to you. And you have to have this abundant mentality because the materials are expensive. And if you're worried about like, whoa, I just don't think it works out. I think you have to just go for it and you have to let go of judgment. And I even find sometimes when I'm stuck, if I'll purposefully come into the studio late, knowing I only have a little bit of time. And then it's like, I need to crank. I need to produce something today. And it's just like I shed all that stuff and I do some of my best work. When it's you just like, oh, there's not time to think about this.
Mm-hmm.
You already know, what to do, so if it can, I guess my advice would be pretend like you know what to do.
That's great advice. I love it.
and do it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Nothing. It's not like you're building a bridge or I'm giving medical advice. I can't imagine people that have these jobs that are truly difficult like that. Oh.
I know. It freaks me out as well. It's like, hearing all hear like comments or thoughts on like stuff that I'm working on. Oh, I can never do that. I'm so worried. And I'm like, but what you do to me, the stakes are so much higher. So
Right. But it is, but there is something scary about what you're producing something and you're showing people what
oh yeah.
I always really like my work, so I'm always really happy to share it. And so, but if I wasn't happy with my work, I wouldn't want to share it. I
Yeah.
really wouldn't. I would be shy to share it. But I know when it's good, and I keep working on it till it's good. I recognize it immediately. Like that's good. It's like I was thinking about that today. I was just this little spot. I almost finished doing this painting. So good, if I do say so myself. But here I am at the very last part with these rocks, which rocks can be sometimes just come together, and sometimes they're so difficult. And I was just having the worst time with this rock. Just a 2 square inch section of this rock, actually. And I'm thinking of the words a master stroke or a stroke of genius, because seriously, it's 2 strokes, because I use a big fat brush. I mean, these are and that fat brush and the strokes are big and there's a lot of paint. Literally in 2 master strokes, this painting is finished. Wow, I could not get those strokes. And I thought it's really, I wonder if the phrase a master stroke or a stroke of genius, it comes from painting. I don't know. That was the feeling today and I finally got it.
What was the difference? What was it, that thought, you thinking that at that moment, or what was the difference in that?
No, it's only, I knew I would recognize it when I put it down.
Yep.
And I put that's it. I must have put 18 different strokes on this. I could not get it, whether it was the color or the texture or the shape of the stroke means a lot when you're working like I am. The shape of the stroke actually imparts a lot of information and has to be right. And anyway, I think one of my skills is recognizing when it's masterful. And I know right away. And when it's not masterful, I don't stop. I keep going.
I love that. Do you have anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Oh, yes. Cindy Musset, who dropped those keys into my hand.
Awesome.
And said, I rented you an art studio. Oh, shout out to Cindy Musset.
Yeah, that's a great friend right there.
And we're still really good friends. And yeah, that she saw that. And these, my first paintings, they're good. I mean, they're on my website, but they're nothing like what I'm doing. But she saw it and had that kind of trust in me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for coming on here.
Thank you.
Shout Out is an Ellering Stories production. For more episodes, visit elleringstories.com.